Thanks for joining us. This is our extended interview with David Allison, the founder of Valuegraphics. The first part of this video is from our GNGF Live, which happens every other Wednesday over on our Facebook page. The second part here, in this bonus extended interview, we dive into Valuegraphics and how people can actually just start using this on their own. If you already saw the live, I'll put the timestamp to the exclusive extended interview below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can follow along with all of our great conversations on legal marketing and the business side of running a law firm. Welcome to GNGF Live, your bi-weekly Ask the Experts about all things law firm marketing and business growth. I'm Mark Homer, author of Online Law Practice Strategies and founder of Get Noticed, Get Found. On this show, we focus on the business side of growing and running your law firm, so I'm excited to have today's guest, David Allison, founder of Valuegraphics. David is a consumer behavior expert, a global brands advisor, and an advocate for discarding the demographic stereotypes. He founded the Valuegraphics database to help organizations create better client engagement and point the way to a less divided world. I can't wait to talk about how this applies to legal marketing. As always, though, be sure to like and subscribe to our page, not just the video, so you can get updated when our next episode goes live. And of course, it never hurts for you to show just a little love and hit that like button on the video too. It really does help a lot. We've got moderators in the chat, so please ask questions and interact during the premiere. If you're watching this in the future after the premiere, we do monitor the comments and we'll reach out to guests and answer any follow-up questions you have. That's because we love you all and we love getting to meet you online and in person. So you can find a list of all of our upcoming webinars, CLEs, and other speaking events over on our website at gnGF.com/events. We have an extensive library of videos, including extended interviews, as well as our in-depth GNGF tips series over on our YouTube channel. And you can watch those videos, well, after this interview, of course, at the link in the chat. All right, let's get to the interview. David Allison, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me over. Nice place you have here.
Thanks. Yeah, we love the GNGF studios here, so we try to do it right. I think after a few years of us, living in a world of webinars, we decided well, you got to do it right, So let's start off real quick. Just I gave a nice little introduction there in the beginning, but please, just for the audience, give a little background, and we'll get into Valuegraphics in a second. But kind of give us your background.
So the David story. Yeah. That's what you're looking for. Okay, the David story. Wow. So I spent my life in marketing and working for other people and for some big ad agencies back when we had things called ad agencies. And when this one got bought by that one and that one got bought by this one and that whole time period. And then that kind of had me run away screaming with my, lit my hair on fire. As you can tell, there's not much left. And then decided to start my own. And that's kind of where Valuegraphics began is, I was freelancing for a long time as a copywriter and I had a background in account management before that. And so I was that kind of weird unicorn who could do both sides of the fence. And then decided after meeting some people who were working with all together, we would just hang out our own shingle and be our own thing. And that lasted for 10 years until I sold the company to senior management. And it was some of the things I observed as a marketer that made me go down a road that led to Valuegraphics.
Awesome. So and let's start with that, right? So let's get some basic definitions, out there. So you can explain what Valuegraphics are, but I'd love to hear that, right? What questions did you get stuck with leaving this agency that, led to Valuegraphics?
Yeah. It's a really interesting story, in fact. So the agency we had was very specialized, and all we did was real estate development, large scale condo towers, resort communities, master plan communities, office industrial parks, anything that had a building involved, and whether it was being sold or leased or rented at the back end. And we did this all over the world. So we were quite large and very successful at this. And the same thing happened over and over and over again. A project would begin and we would get a brief from a client and say, okay, my target audience is these people and these people and these people, and this is how old they are, and these are the demographics. Maybe just a little bit of past sales behavior, like if we're working on a residential condo tower, for example. We'd know that they were retiring baby boomers living in the suburbs. We'd know that maybe this is their second home. They're selling the single family home in the suburbs, moving into this condominium so that they could have some money left over to go buy a place in the sun for the winter. We'd have a little bit of stuff like this. And it was during that time period where this was a huge migratory pattern of boomers selling their single family homes and moving into the condos in the sky. So every single one of these target audience descriptions seemed pretty similar to me. And I ended up just calling them all Bob and Sally. So Bob and Sally, here comes another Bob and Sally project. Let's get ready to sell some stuff to Bob and Sally. So we'd go out, and being a good agency group, we'd spend a bunch of our clients' money, which is our favorite thing to do. And we'd sell out this condominium tower. It would take us a year sometimes to do that, sometimes a lot less, depending on market conditions. But at the end of this process, I'd be in a room with the people who we'd managed to engage and motivate and attract. And we could see, okay, we'd done this, and then this happened. And this happened over and over and over and over again, exactly the same output. I'd be in that room looking around going, oh, look at this, who's here? And maybe 10 or 15% of the people in that room actually resembled the target audience description, which is a bit of a puzzler when you think about it. We just spent $1 million in 6 months and a whole whack of people all day, every day, full time, helping this client get these people to come here, thinking we were talking to these people, and about 15% of the room were indeed those people. Who is everybody else? Who are these people and why are they here? And if you talk to other marketers in any field, they'll tell you the same thing, that you have a target audience description, and then you look at who actually responds. Some of them are in there, but who are all those other folks? Where are they coming from? Seems like a really big opportunity from one perspective to figure out how to do this more efficiently. And it also feels like a really big waste of money that we're running around spending money on this group that isn't actually the group who shows up. So this is what I decided I was going to try and solve. And that's where the journey began, as they say. So I basically said, all right, I've sold my company. What are we going to do here? We're going to figure this out. It begins by understanding why those people were in the room. Well, how did they make a decision? How do humans make decisions to do anything in their lives? Buy a home for sure, but buy a can of soup in the grocery store. Which one am I going to? Same principles apply. And it's all from the fields of behavioral science. So we look at psychology, we look at sociology, we look at neurology. That's a great one to talk about. Neurologists will tell you about the prefrontal cortex of your brain. And we've all heard this meme before. It's the CEO of your brain. Your prefrontal cortex's job is to take all the incoming data, the sights and sounds and smells, everything you encounter in the course of a day, sift it, sort it, and then like a good CEO, make decisions and say, here's what we're going to do.
Right.
So your prefrontal cortex, in a very real way, bosses you around and makes your decisions for you and uses only one set of filters to do that. And that's your values. If family is the most important value in your particular values makeup and something comes along that'll be great for your family, you're going to love that. And you're going to be happy when you'll chase that thing. But if something comes along that might be bad for your family, you're going to run away from that thing and have a lot of anxiety until you're able to make that thing go away. So our values, according to all these smart behavioral scientists all over the world studying this for decades, our values determine everything we do. There's the answer. We just need to know the values of a target audience, and we know how they're going to make a decision. And there was also the problem. There was no way to do this for entire target audiences. Do it for one person. Psychologists can give you an MMPI inventory, Myers-Briggs test. For a whole target audience, there wasn't a way to do it. And so that's what we built. Now there is.
So the value graphics, as you've defined them, right? You had demographics, just psychographics we talk about all the time, and then value graphics. So how do these kind of play together?
Now we talk about this as the three-legged stool of audience insights. You need all three, really, if you're going to be stable. You don't want a two-legged stool. That's not a very stable stool to stand on. So let's just run through them quickly here. Demographics have a very important role to play. They help you put a fence around the people that you're trying to target. You say to yourself, we'll go back to the real estate world. We're going to be selling a penthouse in downtown Gotham City at the top of a big fancy new condo tower. We know pretty much for sure it's not going to be an 18-year-old girl who works at the grocery store and didn't finish high school who's going to buy that thing. So there's a description of people who make sense that we're going to go out and try and talk to. But here's the thing. All that description does demographically is tell you what those people are. Okay. They're married. They have this much money. They have this many homes. That's demographic information, and that's it. And what we've been doing wrong is thinking that just because we have a demographic description of what people are, that we also know who they are. And we don't. We just know what they are. That's it. So demographics still need to do that. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to talk to everybody about everything all day long, and that's not going to work. That's not very efficient. So we move to psychographics, the second leg in the three-legged stool. Psychographics, there's a billion definitions out there if you Google them, but psychographics are basically what's happened so far. This group of people that we just put a fence around, is this their second home, third home, fourth home? Are they married, single, divorced? Is this a home that they're looking to have a lot of parties in? Is this a home where they want their grandkids to stay over? So now we have a demographic and psychographic description of this group of people. We know what they are and how they've behaved so far. But unless you also have value graphics, you don't know how they're going to behave next. And what we're trying to do as marketers is get people to make a decision we want them to make. So you need to know how they're going to make these decisions. So if you have demographics, psychographics, value graphics, you know what they are, what they've done, and how to influence the decisions they make next.
So, you know, like let's talk about some big brands just to make it very, I think, the value graphics, you know, to really hit it home. Because you had a blog post, a great blog post I saw about talking about Patagonia versus North Face from a value graphics perspective, right? I don't know if you mind even just repeating that for the audience, because I thought that was a great way to kind of say, let me kind of go, oh, that's what value graphics are, and I can picture that. Like I know those two brands; they're big enough that they resonated.
Sure. So let's talk about one value for each of those two brands. So what we do is we go out and we find the people we need to do. We go through our methodology. We don't have enough time to go through all that today, but basically we're finding a way to extrapolate from this database we've built of 750,000 people from around the world. And we understand for 180 different countries now what makes them tick. What are their values? And by the way, this data is more accurate than you need for a PhD from Harvard. So this is the real deal. So we're able to go into that database using our bag of magic tricks, and we're able to say, okay, for North Face people, these are the values they have in common. And for Patagonia people, here's the values they have in common. Let's compare. Let's see. These people are all buying outdoor technical equipment. How different could they be? Well, remember, our values determine everything we do. So for some reason, this group of people, their values made them choose this brand. And this group of people, their values made them choose that brand. If we know that, and you're the vice president of marketing for one brand or the other, you know how to turn up the volume on the very specific thing that's going to move the needle, and not just run around guessing and hoping you're going to hit it out of the park. So for Patagonia, one value we found is personal responsibility. These people want to feel like they're the ones getting stuff done. They're not the people who sit on the couch and say, you know, somebody should do something, but they're the ones who get up off the couch and go do that thing that they think needs to be done in the world. Or at least they like to see themselves as that person. They may not actually do that stuff, but that's one of the values that's determining the way they make a decision. Is this product, this choice I'm about to make, does this make me feel like I'm the guy who's responsible for stuff happening in the world or not? Now you think about Patagonia and their brand position. You know, they're very, very publicly values driven. Environmental. So it's all about sustainability. It's like save the planet, save the bears, save the trees. You're buying that brand, you feel like you're part of a group who's getting some stuff done. You, by making this decision, are supporting an organization that's moving the needle. So you can see where that brand alignment is there for those folks. Now we go over to North Face, and an interesting value that popped up in that particular profile was creativity. So the North Face buyer is driven by things that make them feel like they are a creative person, or that they're supporting a creative company or other creative people. Anything to do with creativity is going to get these guys all excited and turn the crank. So I anecdotally can point to here in Vancouver in Canada, where I live, it's the city's nickname is Hollywood North. We're always shooting films up here. Half the films you guys have all seen in blockbuster movies over the last 10 years have been shot in Vancouver. So whenever I walk by a film set, guess what everybody's wearing? North Face.
North Face?
They're not wearing Patagonia. They're wearing North Face because they're creative people. Now, I don't think North Face has ever come out and said, we're the brand for creative people. But somehow what they're doing is saying that to people, and people are responding who value creativity. North Face is having that same moment that I had back in the room going, okay, we've been doing this stuff. We're successful. Everybody bought a condo, but for some reason, the people we think we're talking to and the people who actually showed up are different. North Face is sitting there doing whatever North Face is doing, and they're getting a bunch of people to buy their brand. I don't think they know that creativity is the reason why people are buying that brand. Because if they did, they'd be sponsoring the Banff Mountain Film Festival, and they'd be doing all kinds of things to crowdsource creative.
Turn up the volume of those values. Right?
Exactly. So there you go. Patagonia, North Face. It's only one value for each because that's all we got time to talk about. But there's 56 values that could be in that list. We tend to look at the top 10 for our clients and say, okay, here's the 10 most powerful for your brand. And by the way, for your competitors. So you can not only turn up the volume for your own, but you can steal some awareness from the other guy over there.
So it's interesting, and I've heard you, like you said, 56, right, is the amount of values, and I've heard you describe it as, look, there's a ton of keys on the piano keyboard, significantly more, right? 80's up, 88.
88 keys on the piano keyboard, yeah.
88 keys on the piano keyboard, but only 56, values that you guys have boiled it down to. These things are determinate, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. We've done 750,000, 750,000 surveys around the world. And by the way, this is kind of a fun fact. We've read every one of them. There's a bunch of long form answers on every one of those surveys. There's no AI brain doing this for us. We have read 750,000 surveys without any robots from outer space helping us do this. That's a lot. So we've learned a lot about what makes people tick. And I think it's fascinating that there's only 56 core human values on Earth. You think about how they're responsible for every behavior, decision, and emotion that every human has or will have. Those 56 things are basically the building blocks of human reality. What we know as the world today has been created because a bunch of humans got together and said, this is what, this is what a remote control is going to look like. And so this thing is here because of those 56 values. And the shelf behind you, the jacket you're wearing, how you got your hair cut, everything comes from these 56 triggers. That's kind of remarkable. So what it means, I think, that's beautiful is that our values really do unite us all around the world. No matter how different we think we are from those guys and us guys and however you see the world, there's only 56 things that drive us. How they combine and recombine for various people is different. And in fact, that's the science of what we're bringing to Audience Insights. But there's only 56. We're not that different from each other after all. And I think that's a very hopeful thing for us to hang on to right now at this time when, so many things are trying to push us apart. Our values can unite us and be a powerful, powerful motivator for good things to happen in the world.
So when it comes to values, like I do have a question on, I think there's this idea that, like people are motivated by their values and stuff, but sometimes I think people aren't even aware of the values that are motivating them. They're there, but like we make a lot of decisions every day because of the values, but not like we're going through and inventorying and saying, yep, that checks my value, that checks my value, right? We just buy Patagonia because we feel like it fits for us. We don't maybe think about why, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, are you consciously thinking about why you're breathing right now? I mean, it's a thing you do, right? So you're standing in the grocery store and you're looking at 2 cans of tomato soup and you have to decide. Well, your system, unbeknownst to you, has a way of making that decision. And it's your prefrontal cortex that's kicking in and going, okay, we're scanning. It's this one. This one feels better to us for all kinds of reasons that are aligned with the values that we know this human is using to navigate their life. So it might be you're never aware of this stuff. And on that note, we do think we're aware of our values sometimes. And that's when we get into messy territory, right? People are like, well, our values have changed well, no, they haven't. Values don't change. You get your values in your late childhood, early adolescence. It's a process called socialization. It's about who's around you, what your teachers are, your parents strong or not as bossy, and who your friends. What are you exposed to? And you get your values kind of get locked at some point during that process, and then they're yours for life. You don't get to trade them in. You don't get to chop one off like an octopus and grow a new one later. That's your set of values. Now, how you react to the world based on that operating system, that can change. So the example I always give is COVID and the pandemic and isolation and lockdown. That if family, we'll go back to that one because it's a very popular value. We see it in a lot of people. If family is a super important value to you, you go into isolation and lockdown, you are wigged out about what's going on with your family. You're trying to do Zoom meetings with your mom every day, make sure she's okay. You're just like, you're doubling down on family. But if you went into the pandemic and family was not a big deal for you, you wouldn't be doing that. Maybe for you, ambition was a big deal. And you would instead be doubling down on your boss and trying to make sure that that promotion that was on the table before you all left and had to start working from home is still happening. And how can I make sure my boss sees that I'm working extra hard, and like, I'm going to send an email at 2 a.m. so that they know that and like all that stuff is what would get heightened. And then we come out of the pandemic. The family person will go back to some semblance of the way they were dealing with mom and their aunts and uncles before. And the ambition person would be, heaving a sigh of relief and being the one who wants to go back to work in the office and doesn't want to hear any of this, I want to work from home for the rest of my life stuff. I want to get back in the office so the boss can see me. You'll revert back. So your values haven't changed through that whole little drama. But how you behave according to those values, that can change dramatically from one day to the next.
Got it. Well, I wanted to go into, like, if I'm like a law firm owner, or if I'm a like law firm marketer or something like that, like, how can I look at Valuegraphics and kind of get started on my own? But unfortunately, we are out of time on the Facebook video here. But if you can stick around, we'll post that detail, because I think, how do we actually do this? How do I get started? How can I go do this on my own? Because it makes sense, right? This really makes sense that this is how people should be thinking about some of the marketing. But if you stick with me, we'll cover that in the extended version.
Absolutely. I've got some great tools that'll make it super easy for people to do this on their own.
Awesome. That's great. So, but before I wrap up, David, Allison, where can people find you online?
I tend to live on LinkedIn. That's my favorite hangout. I have a presence on Instagram and Twitter, but that's kind of because you're supposed to. So LinkedIn's where I hang out. And then, of course, the website is valuegraphics.com. And we'll talk about this some more after the break. But there's a book, if you want to look it up on Amazon. You can find it at amazon.com.ca.uk.j, wherever the hell you are in the world. And it's called We Are All the Same Age Now. And we'll talk more about why you might want to pick that up when we get back.
Awesome. Okay. And we'll make sure we get those in the links. So thanks so much. Just bear with me 1 second. I'll be right back. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe to our Facebook page so you get notified when our next episode goes live. We have new interviews about law firm marketing and the business side of running your firm here every other Wednesday. We're going to keep going here in the GNGF studios, and you can watch the full extended interview with David Allison this Friday over on our YouTube channel. We'll be diving into more detail about Valuegraphics and how you can get started using this on your own. We'll see you then. David, thanks for sticking with me here. Like I said, we didn't get to some of the things I really wanted to kind of nail it there at the end. And how can people get started using this on their own, right?
The first thing you can do is you can hire us. We're not the cheapest game in town, so that's not for everybody. Second thing you can do costs about $16, and that's to buy a copy of my book on Amazon. Now, we mentioned this just before the break. I want everyone to know that when you buy a book on Amazon, I make about $1. So this is not about making money. But in that book, there are 10 questions. You can take those 10 questions and send them out to whoever you want, as many people as you want. In fact, get them out through SurveyMonkey, use your CRM systems, teach people to just ask these, to send these questions out in whatever way they possibly can within all of the different organizations that you have the ability to do this with. The magic's in volume here, because this is a sociological quiz. Once you get those 10 questions out and you get the responses back, it'll point you to one of 10 chapters in the book. And each of these 10 chapters is about one of the 10 biggest archetypes in our data set for North America. So you'll be able to know if your audience, the people who've responded to your study, are more like chapter 1, chapter 4, chapter 6. And then in each of those chapters, we tell you everything we know about that archetype. Now, these are the 10 biggest archetypes for the entire nation. And that's a pretty rough and ready way of thinking about people. We're not
So,
all going to fit nicely into those 10 categories.
so we talked about 56 type of values. It's not like, is an archetype kind of a combination of some values to kind of equal an archetype?
Yeah,
Or
so that's a seemingly simple question with a very complex answer, but I'll do my best to keep this short and snappy. Basically, when we look at the database, think about it like a bubble bath. So you're sitting in the bubble bath, you're looking at all the peaks and valleys of bubbles, and those bubbles are values, peaks and mountains based on all kinds of different factors in the data set. What we did is we just look at the 10 biggest piles. Now there's something that's making that into a peak. And that's what the archetype is about. So for example, one of the archetypes is a group we call the workers. These are people who live for their work. They're, in another day when we weren't so worried about what terms mean to people on an internal level, we called these guys the workaholics. But they're not upset about it. They love it. They just love their job so much. So those folks, that archetype, the values align there and make that a Mount Everest of the bubble bath landscape. Now, there's another Mount Everest of these 56 values that seems to form around a data point that has to do with the use of technology. But it's not technology for the sake of technology. These people are technologists because of relationships. They don't care about the newest iPhone, the newest laptop. They're not lining up for the latest release. They really don't care about the tech, but tech is crazy important to them because it allows them to have the relationships that they want to have. So we call them relationship technologists. So if your group comes back and fills out the survey and turns out they're workaholics versus relationship technologists, we can tell you all kinds of which are the values that are forming those peaks. What do we know about their wants, needs, expectations? That's all in the book for each of these 10 things. However, here's the point. Those 10 peaks of bubbles in the bubble topography, that's only 10 biggest ones. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of smaller ones, and there's valleys you should know about and all this other stuff. So when we do a custom study, we don't have to pay attention to just the top 10. But I can't write a book about all of the peaks that we see, because that would be like a size of War and Peace, and no one wants to read that. So the 10 archetypes are a really useful way to get started using values to think about your target audience. But the warning is, it's kind of like playing the piano with your fists. You're on the right instrument. It's just not going to be very pretty because you're just banging away on that thing.
You'll get chopsticks down. That'll be about it, right?
Even that, you'd be lucky. So, but at least you're not playing that broken cello that somebody threw away over in the corner there. That doesn't have any strings anymore. That's the demographic cello.
So Dave, let's say I'm talking to my client, or every prospective client who calls me, or we talk to our clients, whatever, and we ask them these questions. As we get something back, because something you said in the previous portion, where I'm going to see an archetype, and these are people who probably are already attracted to me for some reason. I'm just going to start figuring out now, and now I'm going to be able to maybe turn the volume up a little bit on something that I may already be doing. Is that?
Yeah. So, there's one other way we can do this, which is these 3 questions that I'll share with everybody in a moment. But to answer your question as it relates to either the using the 10 questions or the 3, that you can just use without even having to buy the book. Once you see how people are responding and you understand what their values are, the inverse of that, or the other lens to look at that information, this isn't just about them. This is about you. You've attracted them because of stuff you've been doing, whether you knew it or not. And this is what you've been transmitting out there into the world. This is like the secret radio signals you've been sending out that are getting people to come and pay attention. Now you know what they are. You might find out that it is creativity. In fact, we did a study for a Wall Street hedge fund at one point, and they were trying to attract institutional investors, people placing tens of millions of dollars into these big funds. And they were blown away to find out that the chief thing that differentiated them from their competitors was creativity. Who would have thought? Institutional investors putting money into Wall Street hedge funds are driven by creativity. So then you have this Wall Street hedge fund going, wow, how do we be that? How do we be the most creative opportunity within the boundaries of what's permissible as a Wall Street hedge fund? You're not suddenly going to, just all stand on your head and sing songs and hire the Backstreet Boys to be your, you're not going to do any of that because it's not appropriate. But within what's appropriate, how can you be the most creative of all the ones that are on offer to that particular target audience? So it's really cool to know what's driving them, because that's the stuff you can augment and get really noisy about.
Awesome. Well, I interrupted you there, but like you said, those are the 10 questions.
Yeah.
And then
now we got 3 questions. We got lots of questions today. So these 3 questions, you don't need to buy the book. You don't need to do anything except find ways to ask these 3 questions. So teacher, people who are on the phone, people who are client facing, anybody at all, ask these 3 questions as often as you can. And here's the trick though. You need to find a way to write the answers down, because what you're looking for again is volume. And in this case, since the questions are really general, what you're trying to do is just see if you can see some patterns emerging in the noise. You're just watching for themes in the way people answer these questions to bubble up to the surface, because those themes are the values that you're looking for. Let me show you. I've got these questions written out here so we can talk about them a little bit better. Here's the first one. Why do you go to work every morning? Now, what's important about that question is the word why. You're going to hear people say things like, well, I got bills to pay. Or it's all about making sure my family has a good life. Or I kind of like work. It's, you know, I enjoy going. I really love what I do. And so that's different ways of answering this question. And everyone's going to have a different set of words they use. But those were 3 themes I just threw out there. One was for family, one was for financial security, and one was for, I don't know, let's call that one creativity. I love my job. I feel like this is where my fun time. So if you can hear people answer these questions over and over and you see which kind of thematic cluster is going to be the most dominant, then you're starting to get a sense of values. Let's take a look at another question. You just won the lottery. You won big. You got $50 million. You're holding the check. Why would you give half of this away? Not who would you give it to, but why? Why would you give half away? Well, the planet needs help. Or my dad passed away from disease X, or whatever. You're going to find out from people why they would do this big momentous thing. And as we've discussed, the only reason people decide to do things is because of their values. So they're going to be telling you without asking them. See, that's the problem with most of the survey techniques we have around values out there in the world right now, until Valuegraphics came along, is we sit down, we say to people, well, what are your values? And people say, well, I think they want me to say family because we're supposed to like our families. And the environment's a big problem right now, so I should probably say that. If you ask people, though, why they would give away their lottery winnings, they're going to tell you far more truthfully what motivates them and drives them to make decisions. Let's look at the third one. This is my favorite. What would you say to your 10 years ago self, and why? So let's say you got to write a letter to yourself from 10 years ago, and it goes back in a time machine to the past. What you're going to say, and more importantly, why would you say those things? So you see the commonality here. Why? This is Simon Sinek on data. So it's not just sitting around and trying to figure out the why. It's saying like, no, let's actually track it and see what's going on.
So actually asking these questions, but listening and reading, you feel you kind of, people can get a pattern over time.
Over time, that's the trick, right? I mean, you need to be able to do this long. If you ask 3 people these questions, you're going to get really inaccurate data for your target audience. If you ask 3,000 people these questions, you're going to start to see patterns instead of just individual responses. And it will take into account the fact that people have had a bad day or a good day, or they hate you, or you had a bad experience as in your last time, or whatever. All that stuff kind of gets washed out when you look at volume. So what sociological research is all about. And this is what we do, is we're a sociological data company. So we have 750,000 people we've asked these questions, and as well as 436 other ones, in order for us to be able to track values, but also wants and needs and expectations. And volume is the answer when you're asking these sorts of questions, to make sure you're ironing out the kinks in people's individual days.
So I ask these questions. I listen to and kind of like find the threads of similarity, and then like the term you use, I really like. I turn up the volume on those things that match to that client that I'm trying to attract, or those values that are already even calling me, and it's like, well, let me get more of these people, but here's what the commonality is.
Yeah. And you know what's beautiful about this stuff is, as marketers, we're the one in the room who's always open to everybody's opinion. You walk into a boardroom and you're the chief financial officer and you say, here's my report, here's what we're doing, here's what we did. And everyone's like, okay, cool. Thanks, Bob. And sign off on that. The chief marketing officer walks into the room and goes, here's my report. Here's what we did. Here's what we're doing next. And everyone goes, well, really? I don't know if I like that. Like, why have we tried this? And have you thought about that? And now you can go into that boardroom and say, listen, according to the Valuegraphics database of 750,000 people, our firm is known for this. And that doesn't really align with what we want to be known for. So we got a choice to make, folks. We either got to realign ourselves or accept that this is who we are and therefore change the way we're talking so we can take advantage of this new knowledge. And it's not an opinion. So Bob, stop talking to me about what you think we should do, because this is about data that's more accurate than you need for a PhD. So it's a great way for marketing people to finally have have legs to stand on in those kinds of conversations. It's also an amazing way for organizations to find some unity around where they're headed. I like to talk about the values for your customers as being a kind of a North Star. So if marketing is able to walk into the room and say, listen, everybody who loves us and makes us all the money we use to pay ourselves and do what we need to do, they're all driven by these three things. So let's make sure everything we do in here, not just marketing, product development, the way we talk, let's talk about law firms, which particular practice area we want to invest in, or we want to, maybe not put as much money into. Those decisions can be made if you know what direction you're trying to go, if you have a North Star to follow. And why wouldn't your North Star be based on what people care about and what they want from you? It's a more human way for us to think about marketing, and it brings our core values into the boardroom. And I don't think that can be bad in any situation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've always used the definition of your brand. Like, people always talk about their brand and everything. Your brand is really just made up of how people perceive you, not what you're putting out there. And in the Valuegraphics language, really what we're saying is, like, your brand is the radio signals you're sending out that are attracting these values, these people who have these values. Is that?
Yeah. What are right now we're all sending out radio signals, whether we think we're doing it or not. People are going to just look at our website and decide, is this the place for me or isn't it? So no matter how invested in marketing you are leaving an impression. I mean, here's the key to that, right? And this is one of my favorite things about marketing is nature abhors a vacuum. So if you don't tell people how to think about you, they're going to make it up, and they're going to look for cues on whatever they can. And they're going to form their own version of what your brand is, unless you say, here is my brand, and you need to think about us, please, in this way. So you got to fill up the vacuum. And if you do that in a way that is strategic and thoughtful and based on what those people hope they will hear from you, as opposed to what you would like them to hear, you're aligned. You're going to find that the term we use is magnetic, because people run towards their values. So give them their values in everything you can, and you're going to be absolutely magnetic. I want to make one other little point about this. I know marketing in professional services firms, sometimes there's a lot of, there's rules and regulations you have to follow. So that's fine. But within those rules and regulations, you still have the ability to be creative and to figure out ways to differentiate yourself from the next guy. And there isn't always the same amount of money to do marketing as there is with Coca-Cola or something like that. But this can be about the smallest things. What's the signature underneath each partner's name on every email that goes out? How does the logo show up on that page? What colors are they? How do you answer the phone? And what happens when you leave a voicemail? What's the music that's on hold? That could be a killer right there. I mean, that's one of my pet peeves in this world. They put me on hold, and it's just like, this is some kind of audio torture. Like, make it stop.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Who makes that music, by the way? Someone somewhere is composing that stuff and is just like laughing maniacally. Ha ha ha. People will have to listen to this for an hour. It's what a job that is. But yeah, there isn't anything too small that can't be figured out based on what it is you're trying to transmit? What are the values you're trying to use as signals so that people know that this is the place for you?
Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with, we were always talking about, marketing isn't just the first time to have them find you, but especially in professional services, it's like the full customer experience, right? Because word of mouth, continued on business, and growing existing clients it's such a personal step by step that entire customer experience now, to look at it through the lens of Valuegraphics, of each of these tiny moments is an opportunity. Whereas larger brands, you kind of like had the brand feeling. I had a purchase, it made me feel good. The brand feeling's out there, right? But in professional services, every one of those touch points that you bring up, like as small as they are, can have a massive, massive impact. And again, knowing what their values are that you're targeting and what they're going after, like minute decisions can be made more concretely, I guess.
Yeah, when we work with a client, we do two things. First, we go out and get our data together, and then we present. We say, here's what we found out about your people. And then we let them all digest this, because everybody's brain's leaking out their ears. They haven't thought about their clients like this before. And then we teach them what we call values thinking. And it's a little workshop, and it's a way to use this values thinking process to make the decisions you need to make based on the values data. And we always use silly examples to run that workshop. So for example, one of the ones that gets a really great reaction from everybody and drives the point home is you're getting all of your clients, past and present, and all of their families together. For some reason, you're having a big, giant party, middle of the summer. It means your 10th anniversary party or something like that. What food are you going to serve? What are you going to tell the caterers to bring? And people are like, what does that got to do with anything? Well, it's an amazing opportunity to use values to make a decision. Is it going to be sandwiches? That says one thing. Is it going to be build your own sandwiches? That's going to be another thing. Is it going to be bring your own food and we'll donate the catering money to a charity? That says another thing. Is it crazy food you've never had before and somebody who's there teaching you what it's all about? Is it like, there's so many things you can do just around a silly decision that normally you wouldn't even spend a minute thinking about. And instead, it's an opportunity to let your values come out and play. Now, maybe nobody will ever do that, but it's a great way to show how values can help you make decisions about anything, large or small.
I love it. And I think that's a great place to end too, right? It's values can help any decision, large or small, in that customer experience, in that marketing. So,
absolutely,
David, thanks for sticking with me. I know I probably took way more time than you planned because I just wanted to dig in. This is great stuff.
Well, thank you for having me. And anybody who's listening, whether you end up using our work or not, please just give your head a shake around demographic stereotypes and the demographic ways of looking at the world. And instead, think about what really matters. Don't think about what people are on the outside. Think about what's on the inside. If we all just started doing that in our professional and personal lives, the world would be a lot better place.
Excellent. Thank you. Great sentiment.
Thanks.
Hey, what's up? I'm Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. If you feel like you learned something today, think of how beneficial it would be to chat with myself or another one of our marketing consultants one-on-one. Go ahead and visit our website to schedule your free consultation. It only takes a minute.